What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another Wild Rift video. I'm Kangas, and today I'm going over 5 champions that are OP in high elo on patch 2.1. These champions aren't bad in low elo, and most of them are extremely strong overall, just they're better when piloted by the best. So let's get straight into it.
Up first, we have Orianna, the Lady of Clockwork. She's been the queen of mid lane for years on the PC version, and she's survived through almost every meta for good reason. Her gameplay is extremely versatile, and she has tools for almost any situation that may arise in your adventures on the Wild Rift. Orianna is great in almost every game in every elo. However, she is extra strong when piloted by players who have truly mastered the champion. There's a lot of room for players to show off their intelligent movement, positioning, and finesse when they're playing Orianna. First of all, ball placement is vital to playing a great Orianna. Making sure that you're always keeping it in a position that deals damage and threatens the enemy away from dealing damage to you is crucial to being the most effective that you can be. The best Orianna players will not only consider who they're hitting, but where the ball can be placed in relation to the enemy team to make it as threatening as possible. High elo players also utilize tricks like placing the ball in walls to catch unaware foes with sneaky shockwaves. During the lane phase, ball placement is also really important. However, what really shines during the lane phase is your movement and spacing. As Orianna, your command attack is relatively low cooldown, and your auto attacks are fairly brutal. You want to constantly dance on the edge of your enemy's range, harassing them with abilities and auto attacks whenever they try and step up for minions. Skilled Orianna players can push this to the extreme, landing incredible amounts of harass and becoming obscenely impressive throughout the lane phase. Orianna isn't that strong in early skirmishes, and while every elo tends to favor taking lots of early game fights, higher elo players understand the game plans of their champions better and will try to stick to these plans far more strictly than most. Masterful Orianna players won't roam to bad fights, and the junglers for these Oriannas will understand this and adapt to make sure they can abuse her powerful laning and crazy scaling into late game teamfights. Lastly, Orianna's teamfighting can be quite complicated. Most players will simply be fishing for a big shockwave, while strong Orianna players constantly move the ball into threatening positions while understanding the flow of the fight. Setting up a wombo combo for your team may be satisfying, but sometimes all you have to do is peel back, protect your other carry, and hit their front line to win the fight. Often the enemy team is pressured to kill Orianna quickly as she is dealing crazy DPS. So instead of diving, high elo players understand that they can play more safely while waiting for a better opportunity to strike. Orianna's team fighting is generally insane, and if the game isn't over in 5 minutes, she's extremely good. In the right hands, she's crazy broken at the moment, and when an Orianna main in high elo has her locked in, everyone knows they're on a clock or else she'll carry. Before we continue, we want to make sure to let you know to join our Wild Rift Discord in the description below and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on everything related to Wild Rift. Make friends in the Discord, learn about the game on the channel, and keep grinding. And our next champion that's OP and high elo is a new one, Corki, the Daring Bombardier. He's pretty fresh to the Wild Rift, and while he's taken some time to ramp up, with recent buffs, he is dominating. He's especially strong in high elo for a few reasons that we'll go over now. First up, Corki outranges melee mid laners with his auto attacks and phosphorus bomb, and against practically all mid laners, outranges them with his missile barrage. Abusing this range advantage is crucial for developing advantages in the early game, and is especially well abused by high elo players. Masterful Corki players will set up their minions so that they can last hit them safely, and then harass the enemy laner while they're busy last hitting their minions. They'll also dance at a range where the enemy cannot trade back. This spacing is limited by how good your movement is, so the better player you are, the more effective you are during the lane phase. Another point of skill expression for Corki is how they use the package. While it does incredible damage and is relatively straightforward, to use it optimally, it requires a lot of patience and a good understanding of how a teamfight will play out. As Corki, you rarely want to be the first champion to engage, as you'll just take too much damage as you fly past and won't be able to effectively damage once you land. Skillful Corki players will pick their moment, disrupting the enemy team and ending up in a position where they can assassinate enemy carries or just continue dealing damage. It's critical that you don't get deleted when using the package, as while it still may deal good damage, it's far better if you use it and survive to tell the tale. Lastly, similar to Orianna, Corki's early skirmishing is fairly weak. High elo Corki players will manipulate their wave to avoid early fights, and their junglers will play away from the lane and understand the win conditions of Corki. This may happen sometimes in lower elos too, but it's far more common at the top of the ranks. As long as Corki is allowed to play how he likes to, he's extremely powerful and can carry almost any teamfight. Before we get into the rest of the video, our question of the day is, what champion do you find difficult to play? Most players agree that champions like Vayne and Yasuo are the hardest to play because they got so much mechanical skill, but other people find easier champions like Malphite to play because you gotta find the perfect engage to really make him worth it. What do you struggle with though? Let me know your answer in the comments below. In one of our earlier videos for patch 2.1, we discussed why Kaisa is OP in all ELOs. However, she is extra broken when played by Kaisa Masters, so we're gonna go over the reasons why here. First up, Kaisa has two distinct modes of play, diving and burning frontline. Teamfights are some of the most complicated things to encounter on the Wild Rift, and navigating them optimally is extremely challenging. There's always small decisions that you can optimize, and you can endlessly improve at teamfighting. As Kaisa, you have to maximize the damage that you deal while choosing the correct targets. You have the ability to follow up on engage and dive into the opposing backline, and so it's vital that you pick the optimal moment to dive in and assassinate their carries. Ultimately, playing a teamfight well on Kaisa relies heavily on your ability to assess and understand the teamfight, and how you pick your windows to engage. Far too often, inexperienced Kaisa players will fly in with Killer Instinct just to be blown up and sent back to the fountain. Sometimes you don't even have to dive, and using your invisibility and Killer Instinct defensively is the correct call. There's many different ways you can play out every team fight, and finding the correct one is something that only the best Kaisa players can consistently do. Secondly, Kaisa tends to build crazy amounts of attack speed, and when combined with the attack speed from Supercharge, you can often be attacking multiple times per second. Making sure that you kite between every auto attack and that you're moving in a useful direction is extremely challenging on your fingers, and it's something that takes immense practice to perfect. At the peak of the ladder, Kaisa players will move smoothly between auto attacks, spacing themselves well to keep damaging their opponents and stay safe themselves. And the last reason Kaisa is more OP in high elo is due to the adaptability of her build. There's many different build paths, and understanding when to opt into which variation can make or break team fights for Kaisa. Higher elo players often are more able to assess a team composition and develop an itemization plan that is good for the game. This will find them advantages just from simple planning. Kaisa is pretty OP at all elos, but I hope you now understand why she's extra powerful in the higher elo Wild Rift games. Fiora, similar to Yasuo and Vayne, is a favorite of the players who want to flex their mechanical skill and incredible ability to pilot their champion. She's one of the most precise champions in the game, and executing fast and smooth combos while positioning yourself pixel perfectly can be quite challenging. Fiora's vitals are a mechanic unique to her, and often they aren't fully understood by the average player. But in the correct position, to make sure you're striking the vitals as they spawn is crucial for every fight you take as Fiora. Strong Fiora players will always be moving towards their next vital, and will understand how to position themselves in relation to their spawning pattern. Vitals will always spawn once on a side towards your nexus, then on a side towards the enemy nexus. Skilled players will take advantage of this and already be moving towards the likely next spawn of the vital. Fiora's second ability, Riposte, is where an immense amount of skill expression can be displayed. Lightning quick reactions to melee range abilities can make it really difficult for some champions to even approach Fiora, and making sure that you place the attack well while still responding quickly to incoming abilities is quite difficult. Lastly, you need a good understanding of macro to play Fiora as well. Against certain team compositions, she may be capable of carrying team fights, but often they're just largely unplayable for her, due to the high amount of CC and range on the enemy team. In these situations, intelligent split pushing is crucial for victory, and being able to read the map and understand what you should be doing at all times is a skill that's built up over literal hundreds of games. Macro can be extremely complicated, and executing a successful split push can be quite difficult unless you're very fed. Ultimately, Fiora has the tools to show off your quick fingers, and if you're a smart player, you can dominate the map and make it really hard for the enemy team to play. She's pretty OP in the right hands, and in the hands of a master, she's nuts. And the last champion that we have for you is a classic style pick. Zed, the Master of Shadows, is one of the fanciest champions to ever have graced the Rift, and every play he makes looks super clean. He's quite strong across all elos, but when played by a masterful Zed player, he's simply a wonder to watch. The first reason that Zed is far better in high elo is just a simple mechanics check. Landing Zed's Rager Shurikens is make or break for his assassinations, and landing multiple Shurikens from different sources can require some on-the-fly quick maths. Successfully comboing Zed's abilities together correctly is hard enough on its own, let alone constantly taking into account the position of your shadow and having precise enough inputs to aim them well. Secondly, Zed is an assassin, and assassins are quite hard to play when the enemy team forms up and begins to teamfight together. Just like Kaisa, it's easy to fly in, get CC'd, and instantly die. Biding your time and showing the necessary patience to find the game-winning kill is crucial to playing all assassins, but especially Zed. Champions like Akali and Fizz have an abundance of damage, but Zed only really does when he lands all of his shurikens, and if he falls behind, he will have to constantly be hitting 2 or 3 shurikens to have any real threat. Doing this consistently is really difficult, and sometimes shadows will just have to be used for gap closing or escaping rather than pure damage. Maintaining leads and only taking sure kills is crucial for Zed's play, and high elo players will often make great judgment calls that allow them to stay winning. And the last reason why Zed is so much better in high elo is that shadow placement is hard to develop a really good understanding of, but when mastered, it makes a huge difference to Zed play. The obvious use for Zed's shadow is to simply swap forward into range. However, if you can get into range for Death's Mark first and leave your shadow in a strategic position for a useful swap or easier shurikens, the fight will go much better for you. There's a million different ways that you can do this, but having a living shadow down before you use ultimate that you can swap to as soon as you come out of your untarget ability can really help you avoid crowd control or other devastating abilities. There's no perfect way to play Zed, but high elo players who have many games on the champion will always find creative outplays that push the boundaries of what most players thought was possible. There's basically an unlimited amount of improvement that you can put into your mechanical Zed play, and when truly mastered, it's one of the most satisfying champions to watch go to work.
I know, I wanted Teemo to be #1 too, but think about it this way. Since he's not on this list, he'll stay sleeper OP, right? Well, that's it for that OP high elo picks we have for you today. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like the video, sub to the channel, and ring that bell so you don't miss out on our future uploads. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and make sure to answer our question of the day in the comments down below. As always, best of luck on the Rift. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time.